appreciate everyone from joining today. So I want to start off discussion here about kind of from a strategy perspective around application portfolio management. We typically see in working with companies that there's two core focus areas and objectives related to application portfolio management. First, from a strategic perspective, you've got your business and IT leaders, enterprise architects, finance, portfolio managers looking at your portfolio from a strategic perspective, trying to understand what are business strategies, how do we have this supporting business capabilities, and really where do we invest in our applications going forward, or where do we de-invest or stop investing in our current applications, or where do we invest in new applications. So from a strategic perspective, it's being able to view the application inventory, view the current usage and costs of applications and the total cost of ownership to determine where to continue to invest going forward. And so that's a key component. From a strategic perspective, that feeds into your traditional project portfolio management function as well. And we'll highlight how that is tied together in the demonstration. And then from an operations perspective, we see many parts of the organization that are supporting, the service management, the help desk capabilities, to just ongoing application maintenance and support, as well as IT operations that are looking at the infrastructure, the servers, and the configuration items, as well as when you have compliance and audit. So those that are coming at from an operations perspective are looking for different insights, looking for different information, but still receive a lot of value out of the application portfolio and your inventory of applications. And they do that through being able to have this information available to help them manage their support activities, really make sure that they can align incident, problem, and change requests, so you can start to understand the volume of work it takes to maintain applications, as well as being able to easily understand the change impacts with various items that are coming in and being able to see that impact analysis. And then obviously from the configuration asset management perspective, that's tied in, as well as then discovery and service mapping. So just kind of wanted to paint that picture that they're, depending on which part of the organization you're a part of, there's different functions, different roles that you're able to achieve a lot of value by managing and getting visibility into your application portfolio. So in terms of a brief introduction with the ServiceNow application portfolio capabilities, I would say three core areas here. One's focusing on that strategy and looking at your business strategies and how does that map to business capabilities, and then how do those business capabilities map into processes, applications, and technologies. So being able to manage that, being able to understand, do you have any gaps in terms of applications or technology alignment and support of your business capabilities, or do you have gaps there where you need to acquire or build new applications, or do you have redundancy and opportunities to sunset applications? Next, there's the ability to rationalize your applications, make sure that you can set up various programs to drive and achieve the goals associated with your application rationalization and ongoing application strategy. The next one is technology portfolio management. So being able to look at the layers below your application, looking at those software models and understanding both from a vendor perspective as well as an internal perspective, what's the end of life of those technologies, when do we need to invest in a refresh, when do we need to look at renewing contracts, things of that nature. So it kind of gives you a full life cycle here view and management of your application portfolio, so that you can do that from a strategic perspective as well as from an operational perspective. By utilizing ServiceNow's application portfolio management solution and the different other modules and capabilities, you can get this full 360-degree view. And so that's a key differentiator in why organizations are adopting a ServiceNow platform. So when you think about it, if I'm actually managing my application portfolio on the platform, well, then I have easy access into the volume of work and the associated costs for supporting those applications from an incident change perspective. I can then look at, from a compliance auditing perspective, you can look at managing those risks and overall governance as part of the governance and risk and compliance module. We can then look at planned investment, what's the roadmap of our applications, and that's tied into the project portfolio management and ITBM capabilities. Also, you can tie it in here for the software asset management, so that you can really have that full detail of the vendor information, the licensing, the entitlements that you have that are tied to these various applications as well. So as you can see here, you can start to get a full end-to-end view of your applications so that you're making those investment decisions and operational decisions based upon all of the core information to effectively manage your applications. We see two different approaches when you look at from an inventory perspective. And so there is the top-down approach, manual approach. Manually entering in that approach, I should also say, is an import. So you could also import your applications. You could import some of your software models, but you could also do those from an automated perspective as well. So if you're using the service mapping capability, software asset management capabilities, even starting to use the discovery in the CMDB, you can start to populate your application portfolio. What's also nice is that the platform or the base component here of application portfolio management is the CMDB, and it's the business application CI. And so that's the core entity with the information around the application. So we typically see organizations that we're helping them with their overall application strategy and transformation roadmap. Typically, there's a combination of manual and automated in identifying that inventory. And then it requires the ability to use the automated ongoing, as well as then using surveys, as well as doing your data checks to remediate and keep the data accurate, and or to identify key application owners or enterprise architects of any data lapses you might have, so that you can then get those remediated and have accurate data for your application portfolio. The other thing just to highlight, as I kind of mentioned previously about from an automated perspective, slash where some of the data sources are. So from an APM perspective, application portfolio management, those of you who don't know, is part of the IT business management suite. And so kind of two different paths from an automation perspective. You can do your discovery of your CIs. And if you were starting at the service mapping top-down view, you would do that mapping initially of the application and the different dependencies. And those business application CIs are the foundational component for APM. The other component here is the technology portfolio management, which are those software models. And so those can come in an automated fashion from software asset management, or if you've already got those list of software items, you can do those from a more manual and just import those in to the application. So you don't require doing discovery and mapping and software asset management as a starting point, but obviously that can help ongoing maintaining of your application portfolio and keeping that accurate going forward. So different benefits here associated with application portfolio management. We typically see with organizations, this is really where you can really get tangible ROI. And so by doing the rationalization, identifying where you have redundancy, that's just true bottom line cost savings by reducing and removing some of those duplicate applications in your environment. You might also find with your rationalization efforts that some of the support costs of certain applications are much more than anticipated. So by moving to a new platform, by making enhancements, you can reduce those overall support costs. So those are other ways to really quickly drive overall savings as well. So now I'm going to jump into a demonstration here of the solution. So first of all, I've logged in here as Able Tutor and Enterprise Architect, and I'm kind of looking at my overall current landscape of applications and really kind of continually monitoring and managing my applications. So I have a nice dashboard here where I can look at all my applications by user base, so I can see how many users are being supported with our different applications. I can look at other types of categorization of my applications. In this case, I'm looking at on-premise versus cloud. We have a big digital transformation initiative and moving things to the cloud, so I want to see how that's changing over time. Here again, I could look at that from a different application category as well. So I can easily change that information here in my dashboard. Next, down below here, I'm looking at all my applications by category, by manufacturer. So I'm seeing the different manufacturers here. I'm looking at some of my business application categories and being able to kind of see an overall matrix. Same thing here from an overall refresh perspective. How current are all of our applications based upon the different vendor software solutions so that we understand some of our risks. I can also dynamically adjust things in here as well. If I just wanted to look at our sales applications, I can update that and view the information from an overall sales perspective. So it gives me some good visibility here in analyzing our application landscape. Next, I can go into one of our other dashboards here. So here I'm looking at a little bit more analysis on our applications, but I'm also starting to look at where are we making investments in those applications. So here I can see the number of demands or proposed projects based on business capability. So I can see here with the different capability maps the percentage of investments we're making in our applications. Here I can get that same type of view from an application perspective. I can also then look at the different phases in terms of how quickly will some of those new capabilities coming online, as well as viewing the number of actual projects. So within ServiceNow, you have demands, which are proposed projects, and then we have the actual active projects that are in flight. So once the demand gets approved and funded, then that will turn into an actual project. I can see up here the different number of projects and demands that I'm managing and being able to monitor that as it relates to my applications. Next, I can really start to look at some of the different risks. I can look at some of the opportunities which we have to do some rationalization based on some of the recent surveys that we were doing, as well as based on some of the recent application rationalization activities that have been being performed. I can then start to see some of the total cost of spend on our applications based on the application category. I can then look at the demands here and see what some of the new actions we're taking to manage our portfolio. I can look at drill in and look at our overall risks. I can look at some of our capability gaps. I can then look at some of the applications that have a poor satisfaction score. So I can identify maybe there's some enhancement opportunities, some ways that we can enhance the usage of those applications. There's other information that I can manage and view here from my dashboard as well. So I could get more of a detailed view of the demands. I could also then help manage things through that approval process or see where they are in the approval process to get some of these additional projects funded so that we can meet our overall rationalization goals. So I have a lot of different views here that I can use to manage my applications and really determine our investments associated with our application portfolio. Next, I wanted to go to kind of the central homepage here within AP, kind of walk through the different capabilities here. So as I mentioned up front, looking at the strategic nature of things, looking at the business architecture, and the high-level application architecture and technology architecture. Here we're looking at those various new proposed initiatives as well as programs to really help drive a lot of our rationalization efforts. You can see down below here, I'm able to see various notifications here, so we're able to kind of see some of the certification data validation scripts that are running and see what's going on there. Here I can actually drill in and see as a result of one of those that we actually have some pending tasks to address some of the orphaned data elements we have in our portfolio. And so I can view the information here related to that particular task, see the details, and at this point then I can move in and perform some remediation on those particular tasks. So as we see in managing your portfolios, once you do your inventory, it's so important to keep the information up to date so that you can support those strategic and operational activities. So if we were to come over here and jump in to look at it from a capability map perspective, and so at this point I'm able to start viewing our different capabilities here, and I can look at those capabilities. Those capabilities might change annually, especially as organizations are going through digital transformations. They have a need for additional capabilities from time to time, and so they want to have visibility into that. I can then come in here and look at a specific set of capabilities. So in this case, I'm looking at our human capital associated capabilities, and I can then look at each one of these capability areas and be able to understand our overall score, the number of projects, the number of applications that are currently supporting these capabilities. So in this case, we can see Workday supporting managing our employees. Here, developing and counseling employees. We can look at the overall scoring. We can also then look at the various applications. And so here we have our employee engagement application that's being used to support that capability. So you're able to, from an enterprise architect perspective, be able to view what's going on and be able to map your various capabilities to your applications. And then if you see an opportunity here based upon a score or based upon a gap, I could then come over and from here create a goal, create a demand, create a program to address any deficiencies or opportunities that I identify. So that's one way of looking at your overall capabilities. The next way is kind of looking at it from a risk perspective and trying to understand where you have issues from an overall risk and coverage perspective. So instead of looking at it from a capability perspective, I'm now looking at it at a risk perspective, so I can see that we have a lot of concern here around development and canceling our resources. So it gives me an ability to kind of look at, based upon the various surveys that have been performed, look at the overall risk as well as the mapping and health of your capabilities. So next, I wanted to come in here and look at some of our opportunities that we have here. As you can see here, we've got various goals that we've established from a strategy perspective. Do we want to grow the revenue? Do we want to decrease CapEx? Do we want to really look at decreasing our overall support costs, as you can see here, by 50%? So you can really kind of go in and set those high-level goals and strategies, and then as a result of that, go in and set up a program and a set of actions to address and achieve those particular goals. So in this case, we want to go into the program here and we want to look at reduce our application TCO costs. So I can go in and look at that this program. So as part of the program that kind of guides you through setting up your program, 3 easy steps to do that. First, you set an overall goal. Then you would set up your overall, identify your various opportunities or proposed projects. whether those be enhancements or maybe you want to replace the solution, and then I can go in and start tracking the actual projects themselves and look at my overall application roadmap. So in this case, we can see an overall summary of the program. We can see what fiscal year we're looking at making this investment. I can then see the different demand items. I could click into those and get more details for each one of those proposed initiatives. Next, I can come over here and start looking at the different opportunities. And so this gives me a lot of rich capabilities here and really kind of leveraging the power of the platform. So I've got a lot of different KPIs and metrics that I could show here when I start analyzing my different application categories and associated applications underneath those. So in this case, I've shown that I'm looking at the number of applications by category. I want to understand expiring contracts. I want to understand any end of life. In this case, I want to see the volume of support. So I'm looking at the volume of changes, and then I'm looking at my overall application TCO associated with that. So it's giving me some rich intelligence here on determining what initiatives and what actions we can take that would really help us achieve our overall goal of reducing our TCO costs. I can also come over here and filter the information and kind of zone in on areas that are costing us the most. So if I wanted to come in and just look at all of our applications that are requiring more than 10 million in TCO, I could quickly look at those particular areas and drill into those applications and do some further analysis there. So it gives me a lot of different abilities there. Also, I have many other data attributes. So if I wanted to analyze them, these applications on-prem versus cloud, if that was one of my goals for this program. So really, my total number of change hours, my satisfaction scores, my business value, facility cost usage. So I can really kind of pull a rich set of information here operationally to my applications by using the app portfolio management solution on the ServiceNow platform. So it gives me a lot of rich capability here. So then if I go back and look at this program, then I want to go in and look at our current roadmap and where we are making those investments and the overall timeline associated with the initiatives here for my application. So in this case, I can see that we've got data center move is one of our active projects. The other demands haven't made it in there yet. I can also then look at the overall KPIs associated with that as well. So I'm starting to get some visualizations here into my program and how I'm managing my overall program. One of the next things I wanted to do too, and I'm going to step back a little bit, is I wanted to go in and highlight the business application entity and highlight some additional capabilities there for you. So as I mentioned in the beginning, business application is a entity as part of a CI in your configuration management database. So if you're using the business application entity, you're using the right foundation, and that's where a lot of the app portfolio management capabilities are built on top of. So I've got my information here on my business application, and then I've got all my related CIs related to this business application are listed below here as well. There's some other capabilities here that are very nice. So I can actually go look at my application roadmap. Before I was showing you kind of that program roadmap, the various initiatives for that program where we're trying to look at achieving overall goals across multiple applications. In this case, I wanted to go in and look at from this specific application perspective. And so I get to my landing page here. It's showing me some high-level KPIs and information on my roadmap. But what's really nice here is I can start to filter and sort the information here based upon strategy. If I wanted to look at that strategy and program, I could then start looking at that in terms of our cloud transformation program versus our unnamed program in this case. I might want to also start to look at that information by business capability. So it gives me a lot of flexibility here in understanding your overall application roadmap. Next, I can then also, you can identify which data attributes of the application you'd like to include. So a lot of different capabilities here, scoring and schedule, etc. I could view and kind of understand what's going on with my application. Next, I can look at it from an overall timeline perspective. So here with this particular applications related to these different projects, as well as then I can view the overall roadmap here and kind of be able to hover over the different milestones here as well. So it gives me a great opportunity to kind of view my application. So next I wanted to go back in and look at the technology portfolio roadmap. And so now I would come in and look at it from a technology roadmap perspective. But I will also be looking at it from an application perspective as well. And so here you can see I've got my application level. And then in this case, I've got two different services, which are really instances of that. So if I were to move this over, I could then see that I've got two different instances of this, and then I've got my supporting technologies or my software models on each particular item. What you'll also see here on the overall roadmap is you'll see a series of milestones, i.e. indicators here associated with each one of your technologies. And so you have a combination of supplier or vendor supplied lifecycle phases, as well as internally defined lifecycle phases as well. So as I come down here, there's an internal with the I mentioned, so I can look at this as an internal lifecycle situation. I can see the actual name of the vendor or the product. I can see the overall phase from an internal perspective, so it's pre-release phase here, and the source of that is being internal. Or I could come over and look at this one here from a supplier provided. And so this information is coming from the supplier. In this case, could be coming from the software asset management capabilities. And I can look at that this is when it's generally available as part of the overall phase. So we're able to kind of manage and view the overall life cycle, understand when end of life is occurring, making sure that you've got renewals in place, so then you can create the specific projects. So if you identify that you have renewal coming up, you might need to create that proposal to go do the renewal. You might need to create a project to go actually implement and apply the new release to a specific software product. So it really helps the enterprise architect in analyzing things, planning, and then getting that work into the hopper for those proposed projects as well as those active projects. So at that point, I wanted to kind of highlight, that was kind of the high-level view that I wanted to provide in the demonstration today. I do have a few other things to highlight here, and then we'll open it up for question and answers. So typically what we find with organizations, they're wanting to understand what the various starting points are in setting up their application portfolio management, whether it be setting up the inventory itself or whether they're setting up the end-to-end processes. So we see many organizations where we help them with more of their strategic roadmap. So that would then include doing the initial discovery and inventory, combination of the top-down, bottom-up approach, which we mentioned before, helping with initial rationalization, of your portfolio and creating that initial application and technology roadmap. Other organizations, instead of looking at it from a strategic perspective, is just really trying to focus on getting the inventory in place. We typically like to start off with creating that framework, identifying the categorizations of your applications, and that can definitely vary by industry. Then doing the top-down as well as the bottoms-up inventory. We typically find by doing both of those, you're able to uncover some gaps that aren't covered in both approaches. And that way you can have a complete inventory to support operational activities and then support those strategic planning activities. Next, we help organizations with their implementation and configuration and setup of the application portfolio management solution. And sometimes that includes some of the project portfolio management capabilities as well. And then other organizations are looking just for training on how to set up and manage their application portfolio. So we offer on-site and online instructor-led training, as well as guided APM setup and implementation services. So different starting points for different organizations. And so it's definitely something we can discuss with you and kind of provide the recommended approach. So from a strategy roadmap perspective, kind of giving you the picture view of that is really first starting off with the overall strategy, then starting off with the top down and bottom up from an inventory perspective, doing that kind of strategic overarching analysis and rationalization, and coming up with your first phase of your overall roadmap. A lot of times that can be a 2 or 3, 5-year roadmap. And so that's the strategic set of services that we provide. We do have our rapid start implementation packages. So those vary based upon the desired outcomes of those initiatives. So we have our 4, 6, 8-week implementation packages here for application portfolio management. Training services. So we also provide training. We've recognized that many customers are just looking for assistance in how they can set up the solution. And so we provide both functional configuration and automation training courses, both on-site and online. And as a part of those training courses, we provide single or multiple 4-hour online sessions, as well as a dedicated 1, 2, 3-day packages as well. So if training is something you're looking for, we can definitely provide you more details on our training services. So from a journey perspective, as I mentioned before, we typically see people and customers wanting to start off with a discovery, potentially a deep dive demo of the solution, or just an overall discovery workshop as you're looking at a broader strategy and roadmap initiative. Or others just want to jump right in and want to do an overall rapid start implementation. Or others are looking for support or training as a way to start their implementation. So you can definitely go through this path overall, but you can also have the multiple starting points in terms of your application journey.